These docks, one of the best things about living up north on the lake. Get your boats in and out, just a place to sit and relax, have a cocktail, have a cup of coffee. But they do require maintenance. So for example, this is untreated wood. We've had this down here for about 15 years. Starting to wear out a little bit. Here's some treated wood that's about the same age right there. And then these are some sections that I did some replacement on last fall. Okay, I'm up north guy. I'm going to show you how to replace the dock boards on one of these docks. This is a classic dock. It's made right up here up north, Beulah, Michigan. Really easy to do. Definitely going to save you a lot of money versus buying a new section. Make sure you get the right size wood. So this has got a little edge here in the aluminum that the board goes into. That's about 1 1/8 inches across there. So the thickness of the wood's really important. Get that to be 1 inch thick, and also the width. This is going to be 5.5 inches across here. Heading over to pick up the wood. It's over at the local lumber yard here. Wood comes in 16-foot sections, so I'm bringing the trailer. I got my PJ utility trailer back there, which is going to be very helpful to get a load of wood like that because the boards are so long. Got my wood here. Going to go ahead and measure it out. It's important to get the cut just right. My section's exactly 39.5 inches. I got a miter saw. I mean, you don't have to use a miter saw for this, but it gives you a nice, clean, straight cut on every one of these boards. Alright, now for the tearing apart. Got a cordless drill here. There's a lot of screws in the bottom of this deck. Real easy to tip it up on its side. Sometimes you need a hammer to kind of get things moving there. There's some bolts at the end. You got to unbolt the edge there to get at the boards to try to get them to drop out. Once that's out, you start tapping and they just start falling out. Here you can see why it needs to be replaced. That's all wet there, soft, right on the edge, because that water gets trapped in there year after year and just slowly starts to deteriorate those ends. Finish up the tear down here. Going to unbolt these bolts in the middle of the section. Then these boards fall out really easily. Just get them all out of there. I usually leave the last board in. It's just easier to move the whole assembly around when you leave the last board in. Now there's all my new cut boards. I got them all set up and ready. Now here's my setup. I'm going to do it on top of another piece of dock section there. I got a couple of 2x4s to prop it up a little bit. It makes it easier to work on like that. This is exactly the place where it's going to end up at. The thing gets really heavy once you're done with it, so I'm just going to put it right where it's going to be. Here's the tools you need: a cordless drill and a hammer. Screwdrivers, I like a flathead and a Phillips head. Got a ratchet for the bolts there, and then I just bought a box of wood screws. So now I'm going to move the whole assembly right up on top of where it's going to be. And this is where it's easier to kind of keep the whole thing together to get it positioned there. So I keep that last board on. I'm going to take that board off now that it's there in place. Unscrew it on both sides. And then that leg assembly is going to come off. I'll set that to the side. It's just the two rails sitting there. Now, looking at the boards here, you want to pick the best side. You know, there's normally a good side to the board and a bad side. So the bad side or the worst side is looking up at you, because that's going to be under the dock. And then I'm just kind of sliding these things in here, getting them up to the middle, getting them a little bit further in the middle. It's a little bit tedious to get in there. Got to be checking, making sure the sides are together. Nothing's really holding it from side to side other than those boards themselves. The edge here at the back I've lined up so you can see that it's flush with the dock metal part there on the side. So I'm going to keep pushing the boards in, get them all the way in until the end. Now, I always put all the boards in. I don't like to start screwing it down until I get everything in there to make sure it fits, because sometimes the width of the boards is a little bit off and you end up at the end with a board you got to cut. So here I've got a gap there at the very end, but I can even that gap out as I even up the boards when I put it together. So it's all going to fit. Now I know that. So first thing I want to do here is take this edge, and this will determine the width side to side. So I want to set that thing on that first board, get it up flush against the front, because this will connect to the next section of dock. So it's got to be right on the edge there, right even. And those screw holes there, that's where I'm going to drill. I want to make sure you line that up. No matter how wide your board is, that's going to get you the proper width on the dock section there. Should be a little bit of gap at the edge, as you can see there with the wood and the edge of the rail there. So I got it all lined up. It's flush. Again, just make sure it's in good shape there. Then you're going to drill. So I'm drilling down through carefully here. I use a Phillips head screwdriver sometimes to just sort of hold it in there because it's very tight through there. Then I'm going to go drill the other side. Again, this is the front board, the first board going on here. So drilling that thing through. And then once that is done, I'm just going to bolt it front side on the right, front side on the left. That's going to hold in that first board. It's going to line up that section right there at the end where the metal part is. That's the part that's going to connect on to the next section of dock. So I know I got the width right. I got that connected. I'm going to go to the back. I'm going to line that up flush with the back, that last board there. There's also a hole in the center of the dock. That's got to be in the middle there, in the middle of the board that's in the middle, and then also in the middle of the dock section. So to measure out the back, I'm going to move that stand back on. Those leg assembly is going to go back on because that's also got, just like the front, it's got holes on either side that's got to be just set correctly to get the width right. So I'm going to set that thing up there, both sides, line it up right to the back. Use that as my guide to get the back lined up here. And got to make sure it's right where it needs to be, then drill the hole on both sides. It's flush at the back. And then just get that in kind of snug, tight, just to hold it there at the back on both sides. You can see that little lip there overhangs just a bit, and then the board is flush with the back. There should be a little bit of gap between the rail and the board, not a lot there. So now I got 4 bolts down. There's 1, 2 at the back. There's 3 and 4 at the front. So that's kind of holding the assembly together. There's that center hole that's still lined up in the middle there. Middle of the board, right in the center of the dock section. So now that is lined up, what I'm doing here is just kind of, I mean, this isn't perfect. I guess you could use a spacer. I just sort of eyeball it, get a little bit of space, kind of even it out between each of those boards. That big gap that was at the front there, I'm going to sort of allocate that amongst all these boards as I spread it out. Going to go right to the middle and make sure that center board is still centered. And then I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. Just sort of space it out as evenly as you can, all the way up and down. Now to hold them in there, there's these strip boards. So this is a 1x4 here. and it should be 10 feet long. It's actually 8 feet long. I couldn't get the 10-footer, so I'm just going to connect the 8 feet. But the point is here, I'm going to screw this thing down. This is what's going to hold these boards in place now. So there's a lot of screws that go in here. I'm doing 2 per board to get them in there, sort of go front and back, and move around a bit to do different sides of it to make sure it's holding together. I'm just going to screw that thing all the way down. So now those boards are in place as strip boards. That's going to hold it in place. Now I can come back and get that center bolt hole drilled out. Everything's already lined up, so nothing's moving. There's also another bolt hole that's at the front of that leg assembly. So here, just drilling this thing out, same way as I did front and back. Going to do both sides. Everything is tight together. Nothing's moving because of those strip boards. It's really down there tight as it is. But now that those holes are drilled, I'm going to connect the back section here with the bolts. You see I drilled there in the front of that leg assembly. Stick the bolts through. Tighten them up. Just snug still, not doing everything too tight yet. Going to do the center one, or that's the one in the front of the leg there. There's the center one. Get the bolts in all the way around. Again, just kind of do them snug. Make sure everything's lined up. Start to tighten the thing down whenever you get near the end. Now do the final tightening here. Back side, come back to the front side. Do another check on the alignment. Still looks good. Tighten that thing down. Super tight. Get near the end. And that is it. You can save a ton of money by doing this yourself. Let's just take a look at some numbers here. So to repair a section of dock, I bought some wood for $107. Those are the boards. Also some smaller boards for the strip to hold them in place. I had to rent a miter saw, and then also got some wood screws. That's a total cost per dock section of $162. Now, if you were to buy a brand new section, it's $1,000 plus another $100 to install it. That's $1,100. You compare the two, $1,100 versus my $162 to repair. That's a savings of $938 per section. And I did 2 sections. So yes, it took me a little bit of time to put it together, about 5 hours, to get the wood, cut the wood, tear it down, and rebuild it. But to save over $900 a section, that's well worth it. This dock section is done. Just let it sit out here for the winter, just waiting for the spring. Saved myself a ton of money. You can do it too. If you're interested in other how-to videos, check out my channel. Supping with Guy on YouTube.